So what I've been doing to keep myself busy during these quarantine times are playing video games, designing, making these tutorials for you guys, amongst other things like running and things like that, surfing. But video games has been one of the top things I've been doing, and I've been playing Call of Duty Warzone with some buddies online, and it's just super fun to kind of strategize and kind of run around and be tactical with your buddies. But I've been staring at the screen for so long that I've been trying to dissect the actual UI and understand what the designer's intentions were when they were building certain components on screen. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to make a tutorial about designing a UI screen for video games. So let's go ahead and jump into XD and see if we can recreate this UI screen that we see in Warzone. All right, so we've got our document here at 1920 by 1080. So this is going to be the main screen size that we're going to design for. So imagine our kind of like top bar coming across, and then some of these like left side modules kind of sitting right here. Our character would be in the middle, and then some other information on the right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by dragging my screenshot in, my little Warzone screenshot. It's a little fuzzy because it's not exactly 1920 by 1080. I think when you screen capture, it gets a little bit crunched, but that's okay. We're still gonna be able to use this as reference. So I'm just gonna kind of keep this here. And we can see that we have this kind of black bar going across the top. So let's start by making that. I'm gonna go to my shape tool and then just kind of drag this all the way across the top here. And I'll get rid of my border and I'll just make this 100% black. So now I'm gonna go ahead and actually get this logo, see if I can find it online. Here we go, here's the PNG. I'm just gonna copy this and paste it. I don't know if I need this top little Modern Warfare logo, so I'm just gonna mask that out real quick. Let me just shrink this down. And then I'll just grab my square tool, or my rectangle tool, sorry, and I'll just drag over this. And then I'll select both objects with shift and go to object, mask with shape. See how it kind of cuts out that top part since we drew it right beneath where that was. So now we've got our logo. I'm just gonna kind of shrink it down a little bit. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this, guys. Like I'm trying to replicate it, but I don't need it to be exact because this is just our own little rendition of it. But I can kind of see that it's a little bit away from the edge and not fully centered because it's got this this line underneath it. So let's actually go ahead and make that line real quick. So I'll grab my line tool. And I'll just come to the edge and then just hold shift as I drag this over. And then I think it's more of like a white color. And I'll just kind of move this up. Now see how there's some sort of like opacity going on right here? There's like a, maybe like a 60%, 80% opacity on top of this background video. Let's actually put an image here so that we can actually see that effect. All right, so I found this background image on Unsplash, and I think it'll work for what we're doing. It doesn't need to be exact, just we want a character in the middle, and then we want some negative space so that our UI can kind of sit over this. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this, and then just paste it. That's kind of big, we're just gonna shrink this down. And I'll move my reference over here for now. And if I go to my layers panel right here, these two little kind of stacked sheets, here's our image. We're gonna put it on the bottom. And I'm just gonna kind of position it so that it kind of bleeds to the edge of our canvas. And that'll work for now. Now, so we want this this top black bar to be kind of like a little bit like transparent, or not transparent, but like just, you wanna be able to see through it a little bit. So I might bring my opacity down to like, maybe like 65 for now. That gives the illusion that there's things behind it. All right, so now that we have our kind of top bar and logo and background image kind of placed here, let's actually start building these kind of main navigation items. So you got your play, your weapons, your battle pass, all that sort of stuff. And it looks like from this screenshot, there's at least 4 different states. You've got your play state, which is like your selected state. So we're on this play screen right now. And then you have your kind of default state, which is, there's nothing really going on. It's kind of a page that hasn't been clicked on yet, or a tab that hasn't been clicked on yet. And in this case, they have sort of this like call out sort of state where they're communicating that it's season 4, so it's getting a little bit more of a special treatment here. But then they have this other one where it's like free bundles. So they have like 2 call outs essentially, where if something's of significance, they call out in a different way. So we got the green, the yellow, and then the orange is just sort of like your kind of, the page that you're currently on. So let's go ahead and start by making this first play selected state. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and just kind of come in here and just drag this box across. Looks like it's about yay wide. And then I'll get rid of my border and I'll click on my fill and look, see how this has like sort of like a gradient happening? It goes from like this kind of burnt orange all the way off to like nothingness. We're going to go to our linear gradient, and then on our, if you kind of click through these on these edges of the gradient slider, you can see that it like left is the top and then right is the bottom. We want to select our top and grab this little eyedropper and see if we can select this orange. It seems like it's muddying in a bit from the pixels, but if we kind of bring this up a little bit more to this kind of vibrant orange in our color area here, and then I'm going to select the bottom one and then just kind of copy this and select the right side or the bottom and then paste this as well. So now we have like a solid color here. I might go a little bit more vibrant on the bottom one. And then select our top and then just come down to this right here and slide this all the way to the bottom so it kind of fades off all the way. So see how it's kind of creating that illusion that it's kind of just fading off into the darkness. So I think that looks pretty cool. That's our selected state. So that's looking good. Now let's create this little kind of like bottom stroked line right here. So I'll just copy this, copy our rectangle, Command C, and then Command V. It'll paste it in place right on top. Can't really see it right now, but it's there. And then we'll go to a solid color and just make sure we turn this opacity all the way back up and go to like kind of like a white color, like a slightly off white. And then let's just zoom in here. And then like, let's just drag this down. Let's just compare. So yeah, that looks good. Now we need to make our text label. So I'll grab my text tool. Just kind of zoom in here. I'm just gonna drag this out and type play in all caps. We'll go to like a white color. And then see how I'm left justified. I want to be centered. So I'll move this to center justify. A little trick you can do is just drag these boxes to the edge so that you know for sure that you're centered. And then I couldn't find the exact font of what they used for this UI, so I found something similar, which I think is called Industry. So I think it's similar enough. And then I might come down to maybe like an 18 point size. And then it looks like we're using that orange color, so I might just sample our burnt orange again and just kind of come up in value. And now that I'm looking at this, like in comparison to this one and ours seems like a little bit too bright. So I might just come down in opacity to maybe like 60. That's looking better. And I'm going to select all of these, all my elements in my button. So we got our play text label, our 2 rectangles. I'm just going to group these. And then let's just make this a component. Let's call it nav button. So since we know we have all these different states, we've got our selected, our kind of call out, our 2 call outs, and then our default. Let's go ahead and make sure that this component is set up to accommodate all of those states. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my component, add a new state. Let's just call this selected. And let's go back to our default and make sure that it looks like a default. So I'm going to open this up, turn these rectangles off, and then let's change this text to be more of like this kind of gray color. Maybe come up a little bit in value. And then come back to our selected. Now we got to turn these back on. So turn the rectangles back on. go back to our kind of orange color. And let's test this. Let's kind of just toggle through these. See? So now we have our default and our selected. So these are working. So now let's make some of these these promo states. So maybe let's start with this battle pass one. So I'm going to select my component, make a new state. We'll call it season 4. And so what we want to do is open up our button to kind of see our layers here. Make sure that we're selected on season 4. And it looks like it's the same component, it's just a different color, it's more that yellow. So let's grab our background orange and then come to this color on the bottom here and just kind of go up to like this yellow. Kind of find, let's see if we can find the right yellow here. That looks okay. And I don't think it has this underline since it's not a selected state. So let's just turn this off. There we go. And now we need to make this little bottom season 4 tag. So I'm just gonna copy this box, paste it in place. Let's just call it tag. I probably should have named these 2 rectangles too, but it's okay for now. And then let's just drag this down. We'll come in here, we'll copy our play label, paste it in place, bring it down. Let's just type season 4. And I'm gonna go to sort of like a gray color. And it looks like it's kerned out a little bit more, so let's just make sure that we do that. Let's see, maybe like 60. And I can't tell, it looks like it might be slightly smaller in size. Maybe let's go to 16. Let's take a look here. It might be slightly smaller, it's hard to tell. I think this is actually a little bit darker. See how you can kind of see that separation of these two now? That's kind of what I was missing up there. So let's make sure that we do that for our other one too. Okay, cool. So that's looking good. Let's make sure these are all working. So default, selected, season 4. Nice. All right, we're getting there. We just need to make this last free bundle sort of state. So let's add one more. We'll call it promo. And let's see here. We're gonna kind of copy the same as our default. Let me just make sure I copy this color. Go back to promo. Let's change our play to the same color. Looks like we're gonna turn this this background off. We're gonna keep this label. We'll just say free bundle. And then looks like the background color changes on the tag. And it's got kind of like a green color going on here. And this one looks like it's like more of like a radial gradient. So let's see. Let me change the text color too, so this kind of pops a little bit more. Let me zoom in. I gotta see what's going on here. So it looks like there's sort of like a glow happening, but I think it might just be kind of faked with like a gradient within this box. So I think it's lighter in the middle and darker on the edges. So let's see if we can achieve that. So right now I think I have it opposite. I want my edges to be darker, and I want the inside to be lighter. There we go. So see, it's kind of like glowing now. And I think that they have like a little bit of like a stroke right here to make it look like it's kind of shining. Yeah. Let's see if we can emulate that a little bit. I'm just gonna copy this background tag, paste in place. Just gonna bring this down a little bit. And then I'm gonna go back to like a linear gradient. I'm gonna come up. Oh, and see how our gradient's up and down? We want it to be left and right. So I'm just gonna drag these points. And I'm just kind of playing with the colors here to be a little bit more bright. That might be a little bit too big on the size of this thing, but I can kind of bring that down a little bit. And I'm just kind of zooming out to kind of test it at more of like a, what would be more of like a real size that you would see it at. You're not going to be zoomed in this much. That's okay, I don't mind that. I think the free bundled text might be a little bit brighter though. So it really kind of pops. Cool, so that's our promo state. So now we have all of our 4 states here. So now that we've made these states within this component, we can reuse this component for all of our other navigation items. So literally what I'm going to do is just kind of copy these over, just alt drag these, and just kind of populate our other ones. This is the cool part. So let's just start by changing this one. So this is going to be a default state. It's going to be weapons. So I'll go to default and then just type in weapons. And we'll do the same for our battle pass. Just type in battle pass here. And then looks like our 4th one is operators. We'll just go back to our default state. Just type in operators. And then let's see, we got challenges. We need to switch this over to selected, no, default. And then we've got barracks. And last but not least, we've got our store, which has a promo on it, which we just created. And I might actually space these out a little bit more. Maybe give them like 20 pixels of padding. So you can see XD will give you these like nice little guides to let you know that your spacing is consistent between these links. So that's what's cool about XD, is that once you've made one component, you can reuse these elements over and over again, and they will still inherit that same kind of master component styling. So why do more work when you can work smarter and reuse these elements that are essentially going to save you a lot of time as you're building more of these throughout the entire experience. All right, we have our navigation built, so let's just go ahead and group this real quick. We'll just kind of shift select our navigation, right click, group. We'll go to our layers panel so we can see what we're doing here, and then let's just label this navigation. So now that's all kind of one big component. And then I'll just label this background image. So now that we have that all grouped, let's actually start making these LB, RB icons that kind of sit on the outside of the navigation. Just lets the gamer know that you can tab through these different navigation items through left bumper and right bumper. So I'm actually going to go into Illustrator to make this one, because I don't know if you can actually round an object just like that. See what happens if I try to do it. So I'll make a square. And we'll copy the same fill. I'm pretty sure if I just round this top left corner with this like radius tool, it's only going to give me, it's close to it, but see how this is more of an angle? So if I actually drew this out with the pen tool, like I get really close to it, but it's not fully there because now I can't then go in the software and round these edges for some reason. Unless there's a way that I don't know, but I know that you can for sure do it in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and jump to Illustrator real quick. And I'm just gonna draw that same shape. And so now I can actually round these edges. So we'll do like 8 on both of these. So that gives me the shape I want, and I might actually slightly round these ones, maybe like a 3. And I'll go ahead and just fill this in, get rid of the stroke. Doesn't matter what color because we can change it in XD. So we'll copy this, go straight back to XD, just paste this in. And then we can just size this down. We'll just sample the same color from our other ones. And I'll go ahead and get rid of these. So maybe that'll be like a feature that they eventually add. And then let's add our LB. Maybe go like a 14 on that. And we'll group this, call it LB. And let's bring this actually over to our UI over here. Just paste it. Let's see if it's to scale. Cool, and then we'll just duplicate this one, bring it over. And we'll just type in RB. And then I'm just gonna flip this right here with this little icon, flip horizontally. And that's our right bumper. Alright, so we have most of our navigation done. I still have to do all this information on the right, but I'm gonna kind of work from left to right. So let's go ahead and make these left side components, these modules that are basically the game modes that you can play. So you got your Warzone Rumble, your BR Trios, your BR Duos. I've been playing a lot of duos lately. Fun game mode. But yeah, let's make one of these with multiple states, and then we can kind of duplicate it the same way we did for this top navigation. Alright, so this is coming along nicely. I've got our title, our body copy, our new tag, and I just realized that there's a image masked within this. I suppose that's the selected state. An image will populate once you are hovering over this module. So I found a image that actually kind of looks like that. I then can just drag this JPEG directly into the mask, and it'll mask it in there perfectly for me. And you can actually go in here and edit this. I'm going to scale it up a little bit so we kind of match some of the same cropping that they have. And there still seems to be some sort of like a gradient happening, so I'll probably need to use my background image and go on top of my mask. And then let's just turn this up all the way real quick. I might have to play around with some colors here. So it seems like there's like a light blue at the top and then kind of like an orange, dark orange at the bottom. So let's see if I can sample some of this. Oh, first we need to go to our linear gradient. So for my top color, I'll sample up here. For my bottom color, I'll just sample what they've got. And play around with this a little bit. So I was able to mostly get close to what you see in this UI. It resembles kind of the same gradient. You know, we got this like darker blue and then like this kind of muddied orange at the bottom. I had to play around with the blending modes a little bit. So if you go to my image mask, you can see I applied a luminosity blending mode, kind of turned the opacity down about 23%. And then my background itself has that gradient I was telling you about, which is like that muddier blue and then the muddier orange. So I had to kind of play around and just see what worked best, and this seems to be emulating what I'm seeing in this UI mostly, for the most part. But there's also, if you zoom in here, there's also like dots that are serving as like a texture background here. It's hard to see it in this screenshot, but you know, I've played the game a lot, so I remember that there is that texture, and it's just a bunch of dots that kind of serve as like a halftone background. So we can replicate that really easily by using our repeat grid tool. So I'm going to zoom in here, get to the top left corner of our component, and I'm going to grab my ellipse tool. I'm going to make a little small dot right here. And then I'll get rid of my border, and I'll just change my fill to this orange color. And then we'll come to the top right, and we'll select our repeat grid. And then I'll just start dragging this over. Now see how they're kind of spaced out a little bit far from each other? We want them to be closer together to sort of be more like a screen, or you know, a textured screen. So if you go between these two ellipses, you'll see this little pink kind of selection. We'll just drag these over to kind of bring them closer together so they can kind of hang out with each other. And then I'll zoom out and then just drag this grid all the way across. So what it's doing is just intelligently duplicating all these ellipses, and we'll wait till we get to the edge, and then we'll grab this middle handle and just drag all the way down. And again, seeing how it's kind of spaced out, we can fix that by just dragging this little pink indication slider up and then continuing our drag down. So now we have a nice pattern that exists that's all just kind of one component, since we're using our repeat grid. You can see right here, we'll call it texture dots. And then I want to open up my component and just bring this to the right below the image mask and right above the background. So then I'll just kind of try to find a nice color value within this orange area. Now it's looking pretty good. Okay, so as you can see, I built out these modules on the side here. They're basically your different game modes. I built them with different states in mind. So I have, this one is the active state, and then I also have its default state. So I can switch between those, and you can see how this is turned off now. And I can turn it back on. And if I click my play button to kind of preview our prototype, I actually added a few just like interactions here. So if I click on this, it just fades to the default. And if I click on trios, it kind of fades into, you know, the active state. So you could play with auto animation for these, but since we're just designing the UI, I didn't get too crazy on the actual interactions here. But essentially, they can, you know, both be turned on, they can both be turned off. But yeah, that's our component. All right, so for the sake of time, I'm probably just going to time lapse the rest of this design build here. Otherwise, this tutorial might span an hour and a half, which would be crazy. So feel free to slow down the video if you want to kind of understand and dissect how I made certain design decisions, but I'm also free for, if you leave a comment, I can answer any of your specific questions. But yeah, I'm gonna get into it.
Bye.